Yes, I've just set the recording, yes.
Right. Any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have a few apologies for absence. Councillor Dormer, we have Councillor Hussain, Councillor Welsh, Councillor Wright, Simon Marks, and I think that's it for the moment, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest for members who are viewing this remotely? This is a point on the agenda when any officer or member who thinks they have an interest of any kind in the report will declare that. Do we have any declaration of interest?
No,
None? Right, yeah. I haven't any other remarks that I've already made about meetings for future. Minutes of the last meeting have been circulated. Are we happy with those?
Yeah, I second that, yeah.
Thank you very much. I've got a seconder for those. I'll take that as read. Right, affordable housing programme. Gareth and quarter report on housing and land portfolio deliverables. That's Gareth and Rob.
I kick off, Chair, and then ask Rob to come in as well. So I'll leave Rob to go through the paper with members of the board, but the highlights are laid out at the start, particularly in section 3 around brownfield regeneration and housing delivery, where we'll come to the private item on this, but I hope members will see we are continuing to invest quite significantly in brownfield regeneration across the region, and schemes are moving from concept into delivery. So we've got schemes like Harvest Time and Fountain Lane that we invested in over the last 12 months that are now on site and being delivered. Just one sort of slight addition to this, Chair, which was not possible at the time we wrote the report. The comprehensive spending review was announced last week, including significant brownfield funding available. We are working closely with Whitehall on the terms and criteria of that funding. So there's a £300 million brownfield housing fund and a £1.5 billion, what they're calling a brownfield fund. We are working closely with government on the criteria for that, so that we can continue the approach of securing funding. As members may be aware, in the last round, the West Midlands Combined Authority secured 60% of the national pot. So hopefully we can achieve that same success with this recent announcement of funding that's come forward. Apologies, Chair, that we didn't know that when we wrote this paper, but hopefully some good news will follow shortly if we can secure a good chunk of that money. Happy to pass over to Rob now to take members through the paper.
Before I do that, I'd just like to reiterate that yes, we are brownfield first on every occasion. I've got a meeting with the Minister in a couple of weeks' time where I shall be again challenging him and the department as to whether they can prove to me that we require the amount of housing that is now looking to be built on Greenbelt land. I'm not a lover of building on Greenbelt land, especially in the volumes that are being proposed. I know that my backcountry colleagues and West Midlands leaders all feel the same. And I related this back to when I was at school. I used to do a maths exam and I used to put an answer on a piece of paper. And the teacher used to say to me, "Have you got to that answer?" And I said, "Well, I cribbed it from the bloke next door because he's cleverer than me." Well, that's not good enough. Show me how you worked it out. Well, that's the question to government. Show me how you worked it out. Because I firmly believe that with brownfield funding as now being proposed, we have an opportunity to prove to government that there is little or no need to build on Greenbelt sites. And in actual fact, by the right investment, we can bring those brownfield sites forward, which are far more acceptable to us and to the general public. Andy.
Thank you. Just a question. Does the funding cover accessibility? Because, you know, in Solihull, we've got pockets of brownfield land, you know, surrounded by Greenbelt, but we can't put it into the plan because it fails the criterion of accessibility. It's got no public transport links, it's got no infrastructure. You know, is there, does that funding? Yeah, I know some brownfield land needs to be cleaned up, and that's fine. But there's also brownfield land that's not accessible that could be used for pockets of housing. We can't because it fails on the accessibility criterion.
I'll let you
Do you want me to come
Gareth,
back on that?
Yeah, I'll switch over to Rob then. Gareth?
Do you want me to come back on that, Chair? So we are hopeful that the government has listened to what we have been saying for quite a long time, which we need flexibility on our funding to deal with whatever the problem is, which is preventing the brownfield site coming forward. So Portersfield, which was funded by the Combined Authority using its devolved housing and land fund, we funded the highway infrastructure that enabled access to Portersfield rather than the land remediation or land acquisition. So I completely agree with what the member said, and we are hopeful that the government has heard that and that the criteria for the funding will be flexible so that we can spend it on whatever the problem is that's preventing the brownfield site coming forward. But I can't confirm as we sit here today, unfortunately, that that is in the criteria because we haven't seen the criteria that is being worked on at the moment by civil servants.
That being the case, Gareth, I'll undertake to take it up with the Minister in our meeting, or my meeting. I think it's the week after next. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. So, as we mentioned, this is the quarterly report against the deliverables for the portfolio for this year, following on from previous reports to this board. Section 3, as Gareth has already said, sets out the kind of highlights that we've pulled out from the report in terms of this quarter, which includes the delivery of the brownfield funds, which are set out in a bit more detail in the private paper at the end of the agenda. We've also got the latest tranche of funding from the Brownfield Housing Fund being delivered from government to ourselves, a further 33 million, which is being delivered through the existing pipeline as part of our overall Brownfield Housing Fund approach. And then finally, under the highlights, as Gareth mentioned, the recent announcement last week of further funding from government being announced in the budget follows on from our ongoing engagement with government around proposals for commercial land and other types of funding for the region. There's quite a considerable amount set aside in the budget for further brownfield funds, and as Gareth said, we are very much in constant engagement with government to help to inform and hopefully guide some of the criteria around how that is deployed in the future. So the report's recommendations to note the progress of these highlights, and then the main points throughout section 4, which is the updates on the deliverables in the business plan for the year. Each of those have got some context and running commentary from the quarterly developments as we move through. And as I say, the recommendations are to note that progress. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Rob. One of the comments I made at one of the other boards I sit on is that we have to be very careful at the moment that we keep our eyes on the grants that we've allocated to schemes, because as they start being built out, what the developer is finding that the cost of materials now has rocketed. Anything with cement is becoming probably 50% or 100% more at cost, including timber and steel. And so therefore what we have to make sure is that they can deliver the outputs that we're looking at in relation to the grant that's been allocated. So I think somebody has to keep a keen eye on all of the grants that we've allocated to make sure that the outputs are still on track. Okay.
Chair, just to reassure the board, we have increased our monitoring and evaluation of all projects this year to make sure that throughout the life cycle of the project, we are clear that they are delivering on the funding agreements and delivering on the outputs and outcomes. So we have stepped that up this year to make sure that the outputs and outcomes are being delivered, and we've increased and put more investment into the monitoring of schemes because we wanted to make sure we could reassure the board that the schemes are happening at the speed we wanted them to happen when they were signed off by Investment Board. So hopefully that gives some reassurance, Councillor Bird.
Chair, just a question on this. Thanks for raising that. As you know, material costs now, I've been hearing that as well, part of housing has gone up. My question to colleagues is that have we got extra resources just in case that's one of the companies that said we haven't got enough funding available? Okay. So are we getting extra resources or preliminary costs within the budgets. Make sure we get that right and make sure that the work is finished on time. The housing, whichever area, whatever the plots are finished on time.
I think the short answer to that is obviously everyone is viewed on its merits, and if any developer has to come back, then we go through what we call the change programme, which in actual fact then satisfies the investment board and us that the money is required, B, that we have the resources to fund it, and C, that the outputs are still there. So you make a good point, but I think it is covered. Yeah. Okay. Well, then we receive that and move on then to item 6, which is the Affordable Housing Programme update. Gareth and then Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As you know, this has been a big high-profile priority of the Combined Authority over the last few years, which is to see a significant increase in affordable housing. The chair of WMHAP, West Midlands Housing Association Partnership, Kevin Rogers, is a member of this board as well, so Kevin might want to chime in on some of this. But the report notes some really positive progress, both on the Help to Own scheme in Wolverhampton, and we've asked Sue Summers to come to the next meeting of this board to give a presentation on Help to Own, and also the work that we're doing with Kevin and other colleagues on WMHAP around the establishment of a joint venture between the Combined Authority and housing associations. I'll also ask Rob to just comment on the fact that we are securing 20% affordable housing at least on every scheme we invest in across the Combined Authority housing and land portfolio at the moment, which is a real demonstration of our commitment to this. I'll ask Rob, if that's all right, Chair, to go through the detail, because this is quite an important paper in giving an update on our cross-cutting affordable housing programme.
It is, and I won't steal Sue Summers' thunder as she's coming to the next board. I think people will appreciate that presentation, but the Help to Own scheme in Wolverhampton, as I understand it, is oversubscribed. I was only talking to the leader of Wolverhampton yesterday. From a Walsall point of view, I'm disappointed it wasn't in Walsall first, but at the end of the day, we as a Combined Authority are here to represent the region, and we can't be parochial, even though I will be when I can. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as we've already set out, this is a summary of the kind of recent progress on affordable housing in the region, in particular the programmes that the Combined Authority is engaged with. As members of this board will know, part of our key criteria for the single commissioning framework is a minimum 20% affordable housing on our schemes, and the table in Section 2 sets out the recent or the current delivery of those targets. So from a total of over 7,000 total units that we have secured in the region through our funding, 25% of those are currently affordable, and that is over and above that minimum target. We're very much working on the basis of the regional affordable definition, which again was agreed by this board last year, 2020, which sets out both criteria around local household income, but also wider benefits, including provision for key workers in particular areas of the community. And Help to Own is a very good example of that, which we'll come on to shortly. In addition to those policy developments, we've also got, as has been mentioned, ongoing work with Kevin and colleagues in the West Midlands Housing Association Partnership to establish a joint venture delivery vehicle. This has been subject to a number of papers over the recent months to this board, and subject to ongoing conversations with our Overview and Scrutiny Committee. In effect, we are now in the kind of stages of concluding the business case to bring forward to Investment Board and this board in future. Colleagues in the register providers are working on potential schemes and how they might be able to be brought forward, which will form part of that investment case. This is a really, from my point of view, a really positive and collaborative process that has been ongoing with partners for some time. We've gone through a number of iterations of the proposal, and I think we're really coming to the point now where we're very confident that, following the steers from this board and from the Scrutiny Committee, that we are looking to deliver considerably more affordable homes via this vehicle than would otherwise be achieved. So, as I say, further reports on that venture will be brought forward to this board before any approvals. And then finally, as has been mentioned, we've got the summary of the Help to Own scheme. This is a groundbreaking scheme in Wolverhampton, a collaboration between City of Wolverhampton Council, ourselves, and Frontier Development Capital. It's in effect 100 homes that have been purchased for a groundbreaking scheme that is a rental scheme, but the tenants build up a kind of premium, which means that they can purchase the homes at the end of the 25 years of tenancy. As you say, Chair, this scheme is oversubscribed in the first instance. The first tenants are in the homes now, and the remaining units are being taken up in the next few months. And as part of the delivery for this process, we have set out a sort of continual evaluation of the benefits and the long-term effects of this approach, which will be reported back to Investment Board and this Housing and Land Board in due course. And as I understand, the Sue will be here next month. The next meeting of this board to give more detail on that, Chair. So we look forward to hearing more of that. So,
thanks, Rob. What I would appreciate on this, Gareth, is whether our comms team can get a small video from the tenants that have moved in, because this is a scheme that's, the light is under the bushel, or whatever they used to say. But at the end of the day, it took me nearly 2 years to get this in front of the board. I had a presentation from Sue about 2 years ago, and I saw the merits of that. This is a scheme that in actual fact benefits youngsters who can't afford a deposit for the mortgage. We step in, and in actual fact, they can afford to pay rent, and therefore the rent becomes their mortgage payment. As I say, I won't steal Sue's thunder, but I think if we could get an interview with the people who have actually moved in on the scheme, Gareth, from those that are actually in receipt of it, it means a lot more than a few words in a newspaper.
So just to assure you, Councillor Bird, there was a really good news article and news report with a homeless couple that had got access to a home at the Help to Own scheme in Wolverhampton that was on the BBC News, with Andy Street and Councillor Brookfield, Sue and others a few weeks back when the Help to Own scheme was launched, and that got a really high, I think it was one of the highest schemes we've had, wasn't it, Rob, in terms of level of interest, both through our Twitter feed, social media, and in terms of the BBC News article, and loads of really incredibly positive comments, as you say, Councillor Bird, in terms of the real life impact of this scheme. Really happy to send the link to that article and the video that was done around the group. So maybe if Rob could do that after the meeting so people could see it. It's a really powerful video in terms of seeing the dramatic difference having access to that home has made to that couple. So yeah, very, very happy to do that, Chair. And I think we want to continue, and I think Rob's commissioned some work, Chair, to look at how do we roll Help to Own out across the region, and what the criteria would be. So yeah, we will pick up the comms piece. We'll circulate around the BBC News video and article that was done as well. And we'll also, following Sue's presentation at the next board, we'll come back with how the review of Help to Own and its rollout across the region more broadly it is going. Obviously, that rollout will need to be signed off by this board, so the board will be kept up to speed throughout. But we'll definitely share that, Councillor Bird, with the board, the article that was done.
Thanks very much. It was probably when I was on my sabbatical in Turkish waters. But having said that, I would appreciate looking at that, because I think it is a real good news story, and it's one we need to promote, that we're doing something different. You know, I saw an article from government that they were doing this small or help with a deposit. It was the only scheme, this private company said, that was available, and I was quite miffed at that because I knew it wasn't. And so therefore, you know, we need to shout a little bit louder that this scheme is in actual fact up and running and helping the people who are the most deserving. Andy?
Yeah, just to echo your comments, I think I did see that, but it's probably not enough, because you need to touch people at least 7 or 8 times before people are aware of it. And I just wonder, if you did a survey in council houses, how many officers in the housing department will be aware of it? You know, and I think that's the sort of question I would have. And you know, our social landlords, Almos, and registered providers. They ought to be promoting this as well.
Absolutely spot on, and I was coming to that to say that we need to get the housing associations on board. We're not a housing authority anymore in Walsall, haven't been for years, but at the end of the day, this is a scheme that needs a lot of traction, and we can then put this up as one of our flagship projects and say, when somebody says, well, what did the combined authority do? We can then turn around and say, this is what we've done. It wouldn't have been done without combined authority money. It's as simple as that. So I'll leave you in your hands then, Rob. You've got the job to do.
Thank you, Chair. And just to confirm that work is ongoing, and we can share the cost evaluation of that coverage and the links to the coverage as well.
Okay. Moving on then to item 7, which is the public land charter. It's a progress report. Gareth?
Chair, I've got my hand up. Can I just make a comment, please?
I can't. Yes, of course. I couldn't see your hand. Sorry. I must get you.
Apologies after shouting there. It's Councillor Gackle from Wensfield. I just want to echo what you said, Chair, about the Help to Own. It is a groundbreaking scheme, and it's a runaway success. It really is. I mean, I don't want to repeat everything that Gareth said, but it really is a fantastic scheme. It helps key workers. Part of the criteria is for local people. For instance, people who live in the vicinity, who work at local hospitals or depots, and it helps the youngsters, not only youngsters, but it helps people to get on that property ladder that they have really struggled with. And in regards to social media, it's just been a fantastic, phenomenal experience. The success rate has just gone through the roof. And yes, I certainly look forward to Sue's presentation next week. I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thanks for that.
Well, I'm grateful for your comments. It just shows that politics apart, we're here to represent the region. And I saw Steve Simpkins, promoting it, and I was very grateful to see that the banner underneath this, it is the combined authority working in hand with local authorities. I think what we need to do as well, Gareth, we need to actually educate the planning departments, mine included, that private rented schemes shouldn't be called upon for Section 106 contributions, because it seems ludicrous to me that we as an authority give a grant to a developer to bring forward a scheme, and then the local authority asks for a Section 106 contribution because of whatever reason. And I think that we need to look at that, not today, but I think we need to pay attention to how we can educate planning departments that if we give it a grant, that they should look differently on any contributions that they would normally collect under Section 106. Okay.
Yeah, take that away, Mike.
Thanks very much. Moving on then, I think you've lost it now. Yes, item 8, I think. Yes, is that yourself, Gareth?
I'll ask Gurdit to lead on this, Mike, because this is the progress of the work we're doing on the public land charter with the Public Land Task Force. So I'll ask Gurdit to introduce this one, if that's okay.
Indeed, Gurdit.
Thank you, Chair Gareth. So the purpose of this report is really to provide an update on the progress of the Public Land Charter, which has been commissioned by this board previously. There's 3 things that the board are asked today. Firstly, to consider, discuss and contribute to the development of this Public Land Charter, to note the outline programme and next steps towards developing and launching the Charter, and note that the draft Charter is being co-developed with our partners and member organisations, including an officer working group, with an invite to all officers on the officer group to this board delivery steering group to participate. Ongoing engagement through a wide range of stakeholders will allow us to co-develop and shape the Charter towards the final draft, which will be considered by Housing and Land Delivery Board. This will happen in a similar manner to the approach that has been used successfully for the Design Charter and Advanced Manufacturing Construction Charter, which you should be familiar with. In terms of content, the Public Land Charter will set out key themes and principles which can be adopted and deployed by public sector organisations across the CA region, in order to improve speed, quality and benefits derived from the disposal, management and development of public sector land assets. In Appendix A, you'll be able to see the emerging content for the Charter, which includes 5 key themes made up of placemaking, partnership working, redefining value, delivery and implementation, and future readiness. There are principles for underneath each of these themes, and today we really welcome to hear the board's views on these. So far, the draft charter has been well received through the engagement to date, with members of the Public Land Task Force who reviewed and provided feedback on an initial list of themes and principles for the charter, which was also shared with the Office of Delivery Steering Group for this board, who have also provided their comments on the draft charter as it's being progressed. So the intention here is to really develop the charter collaboratively using the combined skills of the combined authority, local authority partners and other public sector organisations which own land within the WMCA area. In terms of our programme, the aim is to have a final draft of the charter ready to be considered by this board in the January meeting. Before that January meeting, the draft charter will be presented to other groups' boards, including the Public Land Task Force, the One Public Estate Programme Board, and also by the Officer Group's Housing and Land Delivery Steering Group. I think it'd be really useful to open this out and hear the views of members here today.
Well, for my part, I think one of the things I like is in the placemaking is that we're looking now to regenerate town centres, and I think what we can do there, I mean, town centres are no longer, in my view, a place to go shopping. They need to be a destination or a place where you live. And I think town centre living, which Gareth and I spoke about probably 12, 18 months ago, and the paper was written on that, is something we now should concentrate on, very much like the Help to Own scheme. It's something that we've got to now sell to people, that there is great opportunity to live in a town centre. And obviously by people living in the town centre, they will use the facilities that are in that town centre. And say, I think that's one of the things that was in theme 1. And I think the other thing is that comes out in this report, it shows that public landowners can be enablers, we can be facilitators, because sometimes there is a site that is blocked because there's a piece of public land adjacent to it that particular local authority doesn't know what to do with it. But by bringing it together with the adjoining landowner, it can be very much a big regeneration scheme that would probably not have come forward without that input from the local authorities' land, or indeed public land in general. I mean, when we talk about public land, we talk about redundant police stations, fire stations that are being rebuilt elsewhere. It's all in public ownership, and as a result, we need to look at that wider spectrum rather than just concentrate on a local authority. Any other comments or input, please? Right. No? Happy with that? Yep. Very good. Thank you very much. I think then we move into the private session with the report. Can I formally move the resolution? We go to the private session and stop the screen? Yes, it's agreed. Thank you.